Hello and welcome to issue number 1 of Video Cycle magazine. If you're into motorcycling, then this is the show for you. We've got news, views and information from within the industry, all packaged in this totally unique way. I'm Will Crompton, and now I'd like you to meet my co-host, Alison Drower.
Top value for this one, Neil. We can promise motorcycling enthusiasts a different insight into the sport, a perspective that stretches beyond the track to the personalities, the technology, and of course, the bikes.
In our bumper first issue, we kick off with a full report on Italy's finest, the Bimota DB1, talk exclusively with the Wizard of Aussie road races, Rothman's Honda rider Wayne Gardner, and preview the new lineup of stars and high-tech bikes for this year's World 500cc Road Racing Championship.
And we cover Lucky Kaiser's astonishing 5-litre V-twin, Harley-Davidson's evolutionary 883 Sportster, and we take a look at the golden oldies who hit the track again.
After that, it's a report on Yamaha's new pint-sized road rocket, the TZR250, a look at 4 top Japanese 750s, join the boys for the annual MRA toy run, and for the Eurobike freaks, take a look at a Ducati Club's 10th anniversary.
In closing, we have a test of the classic Brough Superior, as well as a remarkable music clip, Moto Psycho by Beatman.
Hard to have a passion for an Italian-built motorcycle, is it? In the eyes of many enthusiasts, they're a genuine work of art. At the leading edge of the small volume manufacturers is Bimota. The Bimota DB1 is considered to be one of the most desirable motorcycles ever built.
Throw a leg over the Bimota's DB1 for the first time and there's little chance you'll feel at home. It's a small motorcycle and the ride position is uncompromisingly that of a racer. The DB1 chassis is very much like that of a Grand Prix race bike, and to get the most out of it, you'll have to be more aggressive and deliberate than with lesser motorcycles. But while the chassis may be somewhat demanding on rider technique, the engine is as forgiving as they come. Sure, it hasn't the top end of a Japanese 750, but it delivers excellent power right from where it clears its throat at 2,000 RPM to its 8,500 RPM redline. And with a mere 160 kilograms to haul around, its real-world performance is far better than the modest 51 kilowatt power output would suggest. With the DB1's slippery shape cutting through the air with an efficiency that would do justice to a GP bike, its top speed is also very respectable, given the engine's power. A top speed of 210 kilometres an hour is easily achieved, and with taller gearing, the DB1 will happily run to higher speeds. Smoothness has always been one of the virtues of the Panther engines, and while this is basically true for the 750 motor that powers the DB1, this motor is not entirely smooth. But regardless of what the motor does or doesn't do, it's the Bimota's promise of unmatched handling that sets it aside from lesser bikes. The DB1's GP-style chassis in many ways dictates the way the bike likes to be ridden. There's no long sweeping classic lines here. The DB1 is best running deep into a corner under brakes and pitched over hard at the last minute. The DB1 can change directions almost as fast as you can think, which makes this style of riding not only possible, but the fastest way to negotiate a corner. At the front, the DB1 offers 120 millimetres of suspension travel and firm springing. The bike has a choppy ride at lower speeds, but at higher speeds, it all comes together and works the way it should. The rear suspension, with its 150 millimetres of travel, is far more compliant and works well at just about any speed. The other essential element in the DB1's handling are its tyres. Especially designed by Pirelli for the DB1's extra-wide rims, the Series 60 radials are the last word in high performance.
The DB1 is basically a street racer. The frame is identical in dimensions to the DB1 Formula One racer. With a standard engine and the addition of lights and mufflers, the DB1 is about as close as you'll get to a Formula One machine. Constructed from thin-wall chrome moly tubing, the frame is welded by craftsmen. The workmanship is absolutely superb. All the tubes comprising the frame are straight and the whole structure is triangulated in all planes. Marzocchi supplied the suspension for both ends. The rear is a super mono, the result of a joint design project between Marzocchi and Bimota, with the DB1 in mind. Up front are the latest M1R 41.7mm diameter forks, featuring separated damping. The left leg contains the compression damper and the hydraulic anti-bottoming device, and the right leg contains the externally adjustable rebound damper. Brakes front and rear are Brembo, with twin floating discs and 2 piston magnesium calipers up front. The single rear disc has a smaller magnesium caliper. The engine is Ducati's 90-degree 748cc V-twin with belt-driven desmodronic valve heads. It pumps out 51 kilowatts at 8,500 RPM and 63 Newton-metres of torque at 7,000 RPM. And the DB1 weighs just 160 kilograms dry. The fiberglass bodywork is smooth-flowing and easily detached with quick-release fittings.
Bimota began in Rimini in 1965. The name Bimota is derived from the surnames of the 3 gentlemen who conceived it, Bianchi, Mori and Tamburini. When Bimota set themselves the goal of being the manufacturer of the world's best motorcycle frames, they had little capital, no business experience, 2 doctorates in mechanical engineering and an enormous passion for their work. The Bimota DB1 is also one of the most expensive production motorcycles available.
Well, it'd be certainly nice to have one of those in the garage. In sports news, who can forget last year's World 500cc Road Racing Championships? It was a tremendous battle, and the 1987 season is shaping up to be even bigger and better, with the likelihood of 16 factory V4s on the grid. And perhaps the biggest news is the return of Freddie Spencer. Spencer won the title in 1983 and 1985, but suffered wrist tendon problems last year and missed the entire season. Now he's back and determined as ever to prove a point that he's still #1. He'll be riding the new Works NSR 500 Honda V4 in HRC colours. The new bike is smaller, lighter and more powerful than last year's model. But defending champion Eddie Lawson is also out to prove a point that he can beat Spencer. Lawson has also won the title twice, in 1984 and 1986. Neither Lawson and Spencer have had a full season's combat to find out just who is better. And with Spencer's 12-month layoff and Lawson's brilliant season last year, race fans can expect some real fireworks. Lawson is again riding the Works V4 Yamaha under the Marlboro banner and has retained the services of Australian tuning ace Kel Carruthers. Also on the hunt for the title is Australia's own Wayne Gardner. Gardner took 2nd place in last year's championship after a gruelling season. He began as Honda's #2 rider, but was flung centre stage when Spencer pulled out. Not only was he the sole Honda rider capable of pinning Lawson, but he was also forced to ride Spencer's machine, which was not suited to his style of riding. But Gardner copped the pressure and successfully halted Yamaha, taking out the top 3 places. He also gained 2 years' experience in one and is now ready to tackle Spencer and Lawson head-on. Gardner will ride the new Works V4 Honda, but in Rothman's Honda colours, and this time the bike will be more to his liking. His teammate this year is Japanese ace Shinji Yatsushiro, also riding the new V4. Another team returning to the GP circus is the Kenny Roberts Lucky Strike duo of Americans Randy Mamela and Mike Baldwin. Mamela was 3rd last year and believes 1987 is going to be his year. As one of the most experienced Grand Prix racers in the field and led by the great Kenny Roberts, he could be right. He's a man that's already got 3 runner-up positions. Another rider to watch is Yamaha's Rob McElnay. The burly Englishman gained some worthwhile experience last year on the 2nd Works Marlboro Yamaha, and it's hoped that this will help overcome his weight disadvantage over lighter riders on similar machines. Ever-reliable Ron Haslam will also return on the hub centre-steered ELF 3. Haslam's successful efforts to score points on the underpowered machine last year landed him on good terms with the factory. The ELF team has been given a new NSR 500 V4 engine for 1987, and Haslam is expected to earn some worthwhile Grand Prix points, even finish the odd race in the top 3. Italian factory Cagiva is expected to become a greater threat this year with its own V4 machines. The new Cagiva engine is smaller and lighter than last year's design, plus an increase in horsepower and a new chassis should see the Mark far more competitive than any time in the last 5 years. Cagiva now has new riders for 1987, Frenchman Raymond Roche and Didier de Rodrigues. As a works rider for Honda, Wayne will ride this year's World Championships on a machine worth over $500,000 US. The boy who bought his first motorcycle for $5 has come a long way.
Look at this on the outside. To the brakes, and this is in the lead. Gardner holds it. Gardner into the lead. And Pace tries to come back on him and hasn't got it. Wayne Gardner, 5 hours, 50 minutes and 50 seconds of racing, and Pace has him again. And Gardner again. Gardner's in the lead again. That's Bob Turvey, the leader of the 750 class, right in front on the Suzuki. And he's got his own race to race, of course, and he's going to have to get out of the way of these two racing for the lead. You can't believe it. And Gardner. Turvey moves aside. I think now it's done enough. And I think Pace has got no answer. Well, it's been a brilliant performance. Fantastic. It earned every bit of it, as did everybody else. Bike one lap down, is running out of fuel, but the race order is Wayne Gardner for Honda and Pirelli. And the checkered flag awaits him, and Wayne Gardner, the boy from Wollongong, wins the 13th Castrol 6 Hour.
This was the second victory for the mighty CB1100R and Wayne Gardner, who by now had a blossoming international career.
I spoke to Wayne over Christmas last year at the North Beach International in Wollongong, and he had this to say. Well, Wayne, congratulations, first of all, on a sensational 1986 season in the runners-up position.
Thanks, yeah. It was an interesting year, I think, and I really enjoyed it. It had its ups and downs, but I think basically it was a good information year of learning. So it was, I think, a great year, a good finish to come second.
Well, even better than the runners-up position is the deal, I understand, for 1987, which has now been renewed, and you've got some big plans ahead.
Yeah, I'm back with the Rothmans Honda team again, which I'm very pleased, and I nearly changed at one stage to Kenny Roberts' Lucky Strike team, but through a bit of negotiation ended up staying, which I'm pleased about. And I'm very pleased about the new bikes coming next year. They're going to be quite significantly changed a lot. And I'm looking forward to the testing and all that sort of, the start of the season.
And how long before you go back overseas?
Well, the first GP starts on March 29, and that's in Suzuka in Japan. And then I think the next one's the following month, on about the 28th, 29th next month. So it's not for quite a while, but we'll be testing, of course, before then, possibly in next month in February.
Well, it's all been such a whirlwind, your motorcycling career. Let's go back a notch, go right back to the very beginning. What got you involved? How did you get involved in motorcycling and motorcycle racing?
Well, originally in motorcycles, it all started one day just wandering around some industrial area. And I was with one of my friends, and we noticed this bike half buried in the ground. And we went and asked the guy, could we have it? And he says, oh, it'll cost you $5. So we went halves in it, $2.50 each. Took the bike home, or ran home and told my mum, and I says, I bought this bike, $2.50, and she came in and picked it up in the back of the car and had no back wheel and the engine all rusted up, and took it home. Mum says, you're crazy and you're a silly boy for spending your money, and we got it going, and of course it progressed from there. My father bought me a new bike for Christmas, and then we went mini bike racing up to I was, 17 and a half. And then I met a friend from Wollongong, and he said, come up to a club day at Oran Park, which was my first road race day. Took up my motocross bike and went in the 125 race, and the first race I think I finished second. And the second race it seized up because I took the air filter off, thinking that's what everybody else does, and forgot to jet it up and make it richer. And so that was the end of my day at road racing. But I was sitting there watching during the day, and one of my friends called John Zammett, who comes from Wollongong here, said, would you like to have a go on my road racing bike? And I said, yeah, I'd like to try it. And went out there, and it was a TZ250 Yamaha, and B model, and I said, well, this is interesting, and went out there, and just the power and the speed really sold me. You know, as soon as I felt that power, I said, this is for me, I've got to do this. And went home and spoke to my dad, and he just said, oh, it's dangerous, but if you really want to do it, I'll help you as much as possible. And I went and bought a second-hand bike, and of course then I started road racing at 18 years old.
And how much money did you spend on that first bike?
First road racing bike? It cost me $2,500, and I had to pay my dad off at $20 a week. So it took quite a while to pay off, but it was a good investment. And I think my first race actually on my own machine, I finished second at Amaroo Park, and the second race I went to Oran Park, and I'd won the 250, and I was racing the 350 race with a 250, and I crashed and broke my collarbone. So I didn't go off to a very good start at all in my road racing career. But it really didn't deter me at all. I went back home and just waited 4 or 5 weeks for the old collarbone to get better, and went back out and got stuck back into it.
At that stage of the game, had you already said, okay, this is for me, this is the way I want to earn a living, or were you still just a weekend racer with the boys?
Well, what happened was I came to a point in my career where I felt like I was getting nowhere in short circuit, and I started to do open, or men's short circuit, because I'd turned 17. And I felt like I was getting nothing out of it, and it wasn't any rewards in it, and it was nice to be Australian champion. I used to think, well, there's Australian dirt track champion, there's Australian road racing champion. What's the best? And this is what I sort of evaluated after I went and had a test day at Oran Park on this 250. And I just sort of evaluated the best, not evaluated them. I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, that looks more prosperous, and so I went that way. And you don't get dirty, of course, yeah.
And did you have sort of total family support in those early years when you obviously were toiling about making a profession out?
Yeah. Well, my mum and dad were really good. In fact, they've never been the sort of parents that actually pushed. Yeah, you've probably seen it a lot where parents push kids, say, don't come back unless you win that race, son, you know. So they were pretty good. They just said, go out and do your best today. And I went home, and when I said to them I wanted to do a road race, and they said, oh, it's really dangerous, it's fast, and, it's very, very dangerous and you might hurt yourself. But they said to me, if that's really what you want to do, we'll back you up as much as we can financially and as much as we can morally. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And so they said, okay, but just be careful, for God's sake. But even till today, they'd like me to stop road racing. They're frightened of it still. And in fact, my dad went to Belgium this year and watched me ride in Spa in the rain, and he just said he watched about 3 or 4 laps, walked away and couldn't watch it. But my mum's okay, she can watch it and thinks it's fun.
I think the first major result you achieved was back in around about 79 on a 350, third in the Australian Road Racing Championships.
Yeah.
That was the first big year?
Yeah, that was a pretty hard year because I was doing apprenticeship at the same time, a 4-year fitter and turner and welder apprenticeship. And I was trying to fit in racing as well as do a full-time job, so it was really, really difficult at that time. And I was racing John Pace and Graham Geddes, and there was always a really big dice between the three of us, and most times they'd have me every time. I kept finishing second or third. Anyway, I finished third in the championship, which was great, and I was pleased I finished third, but I really felt like I was getting nothing again out of the sport. And so I, of course, wanted to strive for better things, and then I've met Morawaki, and of course then I took a trip overseas in 1980 and seen what it was like over there and said, this is for me. So I come back home here, got stuck into my racing, and of course by chance I met Morawaki when he came over to the Swan Series, and then we went road racing in Britain in 81.
Pretty brave step, because it's a tough economy and there's a lot of people over there who want to go motor racing in all forms.
Well, it wasn't only my decision. In fact, it was quite funny now I look at it. It was sad at the time. But I had this decision whether to stay home in Australia and race and actually get paid $15,000, and I was so excited about 1981. Then Morawaki came along and said, would you like to race overseas? There's no money and you have to pay half your prize money to the team to keep the team going. So it was a big step, and it was difficult whether to actually go and do it or what. I wasn't really sure. And I sort of moped around home for a while, and I spoke to Donna and I spoke to Mum and Dad, and they just said, if you don't try, you'll never know. And I just said, no, I'm afraid to, I'd rather stay home. And they said, no, you go and do it. If you don't try, you never know. And I sort of thought about it for a while, and I said, they're right, I've got to go and try, and if I don't, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So I went over there, and bang, I won my first race in England and I won. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like a dream come true, and Donna ran to the phone, rang my mum and dad at 3 in the morning and says, oh, Wayne won his first race, you know. And it progressed from then on. I didn't win any more races in 81, but I finished fairly consistently seconds and thirds and fourths and had a few falls, and it was probably one of my best years ever, I think, was 81.
There was never really any question about the racing ability, but what about just living? How tough was it in England?
Well, that was really hard because I first went from Daytona. I went from here to Daytona and raced, and then from Daytona to England, and of course I met Roger Marshall there. And it was hard because I had to live with Roger for a while, and I was by myself and I was lonely, and I was in a country that I didn't know anybody, and things are expensive there, and I had no money in my pocket, and I was basically just living off the prize money. So I did find it really, really hard, and I was lonely. So I picked the phone up and said to Donna, would you like to come over? I said, you know, I'm really lonely, and she just said, she hit her mum and dad for an air ticket, and they said, oh, well, you know, if you really want to do it. And so Donna came overseas to England, and it was much better then because then it was like a part of home with me, and there was someone like a shoulder to cry on and vice versa. So it was quite good. So we lived with Roger for, what, 4 months? And then we moved, eventually after the prize money I was winning, I could actually afford to rent a house. So I went and lived in Leicester, which was about an hour away from Roger Marshall in England.
Of course, Donna, you've been through the thick and thin of all this. What's the true story? What was it like in England?
It was hard at first. We had a little Austin 1800 we bought at the auctions,
Yeah.
didn't we?
Yeah.
And we spent a few nights sleeping in the back of this car at racetracks.
Yeah, I did that many a time.
Eating chips for breakfast, and we shared. One night he had a. We were in the back of the car sleeping. I had the front seat, he had the back. You had a jacket and I had a towel, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's all we had all night.
Yeah.
It was snowing outside.
Kept starting the engine up to try and keep the engine warm, to keep warm. In fact, it was at Alton Park.
Yeah, there were some tough times.
So it must have paid off though, because you've just become engaged, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was. It did have its tough times.
Yeah.
But I think that made it all the more enjoyable for us.
Well, at the time it was tough because I was saying, oh, I hate this and I hate this, and you know, and it was really hard. But now I think about it, it was probably one of the most enjoyable years because it was all new and interesting, and it was tough, but it was also enjoyable tough. And you could get away with a lot of things which you couldn't do now, you know. I mean, I had this old car and I used to do some crazy things in it, and life was just a sort of a bit of a joke, really, and just having a good time. And it was hard, but like I say, it was probably one of the most enjoyable years ever.
Well, of course, in 81 and 82, you had a 6-hour and a Swan Series win locally, which of course boosted your image fairly substantially in Australia, but it was still fairly tough to crack that English market, but you came up with it.
Well, yeah, like I say, I won my first race in England in 81, and then the rest of the year I was trying so hard to try and win some more, but everyone had picked the pace up. And of course my bikes weren't as good as the others, but I was still enjoying my racing, and I was trying harder and harder. I had quite a few crashes. In fact, I broke my ankle in 81, and I also had a couple of outings in Japan, and I'd done very successfully though. I won the 200 kilometre, and I think we were pole position in the 8 hours. So the whole season on a package was reasonably good, except I didn't win many races, only one. So of course from that came the offer from Honda Britain, and it was quite unusual how the offer came. In fact, we went to Belgium, and I was asked to drive a car for a lady called Ruth Randall, and she said, if you drive my car, she said, you can go to the GP. And I said, oh great, I can see the first GP, you know. And both Don and I went there, and we slept in the car, and she slept in the hotel. In fact, we were in the car park. And I was walking up the pit lane and looking at all the bikes, and Barry Simmons from Honda Britain came up and says, listen, we'd like to talk to you about next season. When you got a chance, could you come to Honda Britain? I said, God, that's fantastic. I said to Donna, did you hear that? That was fantastic. I said, actually, a factory is interested in me. And I couldn't believe it. So I said, okay, thanks, Barry, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. So just took about 3 more steps, and Martin Ogborn from Suzuki comes running up, and he said, was Barry Simmons talking to you about joining for next year? And I said, yeah. He said, I didn't know what to say. I said, yeah. He said, listen, don't sign anything until we talk to you as well. I said, oh, okay, I'll see you in a few weeks. He goes, yeah. So I couldn't believe 2 factories come up and said that. But then we took about another 10 steps, and then Paul Butler from Yamaha came running up. He said, oh, excuse me. He said, we want to talk to you about next year, possibly joining Yamaha. I said, you could have knocked me over with a feather, you know. I couldn't believe it. I just said, wow, you know, and I sort of straight off, you know, after the meeting, straight back to the pub and had a few beers, and I said, I can't believe it, somebody, you know, 3 factories chasing me, and I was pretty excited because, you know, I've never had that sort of enthusiasm and interest in my racing, so it was maybe a change of times then.
Well, in '83 you won the British Formula 1 Championship, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. I won at 83 and 84.
Yeah, yeah. And a British 500, I think, from memory, which is where you became totally introduced to the 500s. I think you had 2 Grand Prix starts in '83, and that was where you got your first taste, but I understand it was pretty tough in those days. Was there a point where you thought, well, you know, if I bail, I can win in Australia, I can win in England, should I go into this deep, dark world?
Well, what happened was, I come to a point in my career in '84, and I said to Barry Simmons, I've won everything that was going in Britain. I've won street bikes, Formula 1s, 500s, you name it, everything that was going. And I said to Barry, I'm not really getting any further. I've come to a point where I've won everything, and I was losing interest, basically. So I said, I want to go GP racing, and he just said, yeah, I'd like you to, but we haven't got the budget. And of course, Barry Simmons chased around for a while, and then the opportunity come for me. Barry says, okay, we can't find you money, but he said, if you pay for the GPs, we can go, but we'll give you the bike and the spares, and you just pay for the accommodation, mechanics, wages, and so on. So that was a pretty tough time whether to go and spend my money, and it was a pretty hard decision. It was very hairy, very hard.
And of course the thing was, the first Grand Prix outing was in Alison, Holland.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one that you'd like to forget, and I'm sure Franco and Cini would agree. That accident was pretty horrific.
Well, yeah, like I say, it was my decision to go and pay for my racing, and then I thought, well, okay, here we go, I've got to make a good impression. So I went out there, and of course I wanted to try and come in the first 10 in my first GP outing, which, as you said, was Alison. And then, unfortunately, Franco and Cini, second lap or third lap, I was 5th or 6th place, which was pretty good. And Franco came off, unfortunately, and I tried to avoid him and ran off to the left-hand side of him. And just as he got up and started to run across the track, and unfortunately we were a path looking for a collision, and I hit him and his helmet flew off, and I put him into a coma. And I came off and landed in a ditch, and I think, you know, a lot of things... No, I torn some ligaments in both my... No, in fact I did break a bone, yeah, I broke my finger, and I tore some ligaments in my leg. And I was very, very disappointed because, you know, emotionally, because I'd had an accident with him, and of course my expectation, I wanted to actually do very well my first outing and impress everybody, and of course then have people fighting for my signature. This is what I was sort of imagining. And then of course, you know, it was a sad start. And
did you get any negative reaction from people around you? Because at the time, Suzuki and Honda were big business, and he'd been a world champion in recent years.
Very much.
People see that in a bad light?
Very, very much. And I started to believe it myself, that I was doing the wrong thing, even though I wasn't in the wrong. It was coming across that I started thinking maybe I shouldn't have been there. I blame myself. I shouldn't have been racing. Maybe I'm not good enough, and I can't cut it, and so on. So I started blaming myself, and I just said to Donna and also Roger Marshall was with me, I said, that's it, I'm quitting racing. I'm giving up, because I had plaster up here and plaster down there. And probably what really confirmed this thought of mine was Franco's brother was in hospital and downstairs, and said, oh, come and see Franco. He said, he's okay. He'd like to see us. So I stumbled up and got in the elevator, fell over in the elevator, and was really, you know, so upset. And of course Roger put me in a wheelchair and he wheeled me into the room in intensive care. And I thought Franco was sitting up talking and how you doing and hello. But when I walked in there, wheeled me in, I remember looking and he was just laying there, and they had him tied down and he was just twitching, and he was in a coma, and he had wires and things all over him, and his face was a mess because he cut all his face open. And I just broke down and cried and cried and cried. And I think that was probably the most toughest time I've ever had in my career, and I just said to Roger, take me away, I want to get out of here. I said, take me home, I'm going home to Australia, I'm giving up racing, that's it. I said, if this is racing, I don't like it. But, you know, it was really sad, and of course, 3-4 weeks later, I sat at home and thought about it, and I was still contracted to race. Yeah. And I went and raced the next one at Donington, and of course by then I'd heard Franco come out of his coma and he was getting better, and they said he'd be back to normal. So I went to Donington and raced, and I won the next race. So it was all forgotten, but the memory still lies in there. But now I sort of look at it, it was a good learning process in certain ways, because it's taught me to have respect for danger, that you can injure yourself, and it sort of made me grow up, you know, and sort of one crash, if you could say it like that. And also become famous overnight. I mean, my picture was worldwide, I mean, which isn't a very nice thing to think of, but became famous for a crash worldwide overnight.
You made your second Grand Prix start in '83, which I think was Italy,
Yeah.
and it was a reasonable race for you, so that must have re-inspired you in some sort of way.
Well, of course, you know, I went to Donington, I said, and raced, and I won that following race, and then it started to renew enthusiasm and so on. But of course I said to Barry, I don't want to really keep doing this racing in Britain, and I was still determined to get in GPs by then. And yes, of course I went there and had a good result, and then started getting enthusiastic again for the following year. So it was a bad memory, but also a good memory to keep in the back of your head, you know, not to go and do silly things.
'84 was a busy year. A
Yeah.
year where you tackled the British scene and also a limited program for the World Road Racing Championships, and things started to brighten up then, didn't they?
Well, of course, I said that was the year, you know, that I really wanted to go out and do it, but I was still contracted to do the British scene, but of course I wanted to do the GP, so we just tried to fit in everything, and I think in that season I raced 36 races in a year, which is, you know, quite a lot of races considering it finishes in October and starts in February. So it was hard work, but it was something I really wanted to do. It was something I had to strive for, and it was, I think, a sense of determination that I had to do it and I had to show them, you know, and I just kept at it, and it's like hitting a nail on a piece of wood. I just kept bang, 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 hitting away until I got it.
Even on a limited program, you managed to 7th in the World Championship that year, and I think you had to finance some of it yourself. So even as recent as 2 years ago, you were having to do that kind of work. So it's a long, hard road to hoe. But you picked up a British 500 and a British Formula One, and you established yourself on the Grand Prix scene.
Yeah. Well, it was, yeah, as you said, I won the British titles, which was fantastic considering I did 5 GPs. But it was also another good learning year because it was how to pace myself out, how to... In fact, the funny thing was, the more GPs I did, the more I learned, and the easier the British racing came. So it sort of worked in both ways too.
Well, in '84, I think you came back to Australia for a successful outing as well. Although you didn't win, but you finished second in the 6 hour in one of the best races of all time.
Yeah, by, what, 3 seconds or something.
So close.
It was, yeah, ridiculous. It was, you know, one race. It was a good race. I mean, we were happy. We still finished second, but it would have been nice to win. But yeah, it was probably one of the most controversial races for a long time because, in fact, they finished the race early by a few seconds, and we were catching at the time. But you know, that's racing, and it's history now. It's water under the bridge. So it was a good race.
To '85, and then you'd established yourself for a full Grand Prix season, but still with Honda Britain as distinct from a full works ride.
Yeah.
But that's when things really got cranky, didn't they?
That's right. We were given an NS 3-cylinder, which is like the factory 3-cylinder, which wasn't really up to par compared to Freddie's machine. He had a 4-cylinder, which is, of course, the better bike at the time. But we were just more or less what we call support riders in Honda, which was fine. I mean, we went to South Africa and I finished on the rostrum there for the start of the year, and so that was a good start. And that was probably a really good year because...
It was a good year because there were also many Honda riders that year as well.
That's
right.
Guys with V3s. That's right, yeah. It was always a big race between Randy and Ron Haslam and myself to see who could beat who. And most times I beat them, so I had an enjoyable year. It was good because it was a new and interesting trail. I mean, it was like going to Britain for the first time. It was my first full season at GPs, and it was all new circuits, new countries, and that was a pretty interesting year, and I really enjoyed that year. It was fantastic.
Well, it was fantastic up to a point. I think rounds 9, 10 and 11, which from memory were France, Britain and Sweden.
Yeah.
Things came undone in a big way, particularly Sweden. Well, you rode the V4 in Britain, which was your first opportunity on the big bike.
Yeah.
Terrible weather.
Yeah.
Didn't work out, couldn't see where you were going.
No.
The next round at Sweden was a disaster, wasn't it? That could have been your first Grand Prix win.
Well, it could have been. Also, the other one was also Le Mans. While I was leading, the old tyre disintegrated, and that was the end of my race. But as you said, things started to undo themselves, and Silverstone fogged up with visor, so I had to pull in, and there was no points there as well. And then we went to Sweden, and in with a very, very good chance there. And of course, half a lap from the finish, I ran out of petrol, and you know, it was just one of them things. Oh, yeah, you know, Kenny Roberts said to me once, he said, it always happens to somebody once in their career, and hopefully that happened once and it won't ever happen again.
But then the final race of that series in '85, you picked up a second in the last race of the year.
Yeah.
From there on in, you must have known that you were in with a big show to rattle the World Championship.
Well, it was good, but there was also Freddie missing at the time. So I finished second to Eddie, which was great. I mean, I was quite pleased. But there's nothing like winning, you know, and to me, if you don't win, you might as well come last. I mean, that's the sort of thing to me, and I just like winning. And of course, I started to feel then, maybe I have got it. And of course, then the more offers come, and then Honda, or the Works Honda team, then approached me for the following year. That's right. And so I thought, well, I'm in with a good chance, and of course I went with Honda, and I ended up finishing second this year. So, you know, it's been a great, a sort of nice steady progress, and it hasn't been easy. I mean, a lot of people says, oh, you've had a good run, you've had lots of good luck and good opportunities, but I think probably the most important thing is I've been really determined at times. I mean, there has been bad times when I said, that's it, I'm chucking it in, I'm sick of racing. But I've been really determined, and I've kept pushing, I've kept trying, and but the good thing about it is you appreciate it more, I think, in the long run, which is good.
7th, 4th and 2nd, 3 successive years. Yeah. Chances for a World Championship in '87?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm not going to come second again. I've had a nice, as you said, a nice steady progress forward, and I wouldn't like to finish anything lower than first next year. In fact, I'd like to win at least 5 or 6 GPs next year, and I think whoever wins the World Championship would have to at least win that many, and of course good finishes for the rest of them. But it's possibly going to be one of the hardest seasons, I think, for probably, you know, in the history of motorcycle racing, because the amount of factory bikes that's going to be available to many good riders, and there's probably going to be something like about 12 or 14 factory bikes. So it's going to be a good race to come in the first 10. But I still see it next year with Freddie coming back, between Freddie, Eddie and myself, the championship. But which way it swings between them three, who knows? But hopefully it'll be me this time first.
Aside from the intensity of the racing game, what about the lighter moments over the years in all this? Have there been some funny moments around the circus? Because that's what it is.
Yeah,
it's a community that travels around the world.
It certainly is, very much. I think probably one of the funniest things would have been when I hurt my elbow arm wrestling on the boat down to Spain. And this is pretty funny, I think, and I was really embarrassed about it at the time. But I hurt my elbow and had tennis elbow, and turned up at Spain, and I couldn't ride. Every time I tried to ride, I'd really have a sore elbow. So I went to see the doctor there, and he said, oh, blah, 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 in Spanish, and he said, I can understand, take these, and you'll be okay. So he gave me these packet of capsule things, and I thought, they're strange-looking tablets, these. They're like a torpedo shape. And so I went back to my mechanics and I said, oh, I've got these, I'm supposed to take these, it'll fix my arm up perfect. I said, this is what the Spanish doctor said. He says, oh, great, get them into you. So they're getting me water, because they want to see me do really well. So I'm popping them out and started eating. And I said, God, these taste so horrible. I said, they taste like candle wax. I said, they're disgustingly horrible. So I'm just eating away, and I thought, you know, I was supposed to have one. I thought, I'll have 2, and I thought, maybe have 3, maybe get rid of it quicker. So I went back to the Rothmans bus, and we're having dinner, and one of the Rothmans girls comes and says, oh, how's your elbow? I said, oh, I've got these tablets to take. I said, I've had 3 already. I said, they taste horrible, but, you know, they seem to be working. And she said, I'll give us a look. So she had a look, and she says, what did you do with these? I said, I ate them. She says, you didn't, did you? I says, yeah. She says, oh, they're suppositories. I says, oh, no. I said, suppositories? She says, yeah. And I says, oh, no. And I was really embarrassed. I thought I was going to start getting sick and start vomiting everywhere. And I was so embarrassed at the time. And then everybody caught wind of it, you know, Chris Carter and all the media, and they were asking me, oh, so you Australians can't tell between your head and your bum, you know? And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. So everybody gave me heaps about it for a long time. Even Stuart Hall on the BBC radio, he was asking me about it, and apparently he had everybody in England in stitches what I did. I was eating suppositories, and but the funny thing is, I went out and came in after practice, and my elbow was fixed. I says, I better rewrite the medical journals now, because they actually worked. So maybe you shouldn't put them in other places, you should be eating them.
Good fun.
So yeah, that was probably one light-hearted moment. There's been, you know, the whole racing career, there's been As I said, there's been sad times, but there's been many, many good times. I mean, travelling is so great. I mean, I think it's fantastic to be able to travel around the world, and I mean, of course, we go out to clubs and we go in a lot of places and have a good time, and we get ourselves into some serious trouble sometimes, and also some light-hearted trouble. So there's a bit of everything. It's pretty good.
This is very cliche, but it happens to people in your position. How are you handling the fame and fortune of it all now? Because you've got a good contract for 1987. To some degree, you've got some adulation here in Australia, and certainly throughout Europe. You're quite a sports star.
Yeah, I think the important thing is it kind of does get to you sometimes, and you start to believe, and of course people say, oh, you're great, you're great, you're great, and you think, well, you know, maybe I am. But the good thing is that you go out in the track and it soon pulls you into gear, because then you realise, or if you fall off or something, you think, oh, I'm not as good as I think I am. So yeah, I am just like the next person in the street. So, and also when I come home to Australia here, I get it with all my friends, and they just treat me like I haven't been anywhere and I'm nobody, and I like that. I mean, I like going to the pub and have a few beers, and they don't even ask me about motorbikes, so it's just been back to normal, and it sort of brings me back down a peg. So there is times just to understand it, you know. I think it's basically self-analysis, you know. You've got to understand where you get a bit headstrong and try to stop yourself. And of course, I've also said to Donna and also my mechanics, I said, if I get headstrong at all, I says, you kick me up the butt as hard as you can. I says, I don't want to be like that. I just want to be just plain Wayne and just enjoy myself and have a good time, and never change that at all in my life.
Your thoughts on all of this, Donna? You enjoy the whole scene? You like travelling? You like being a part of it?
I love it. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Always have from the start. This has been good, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The cornier questions always come out in these kinds of things, but what about the aspect of danger? We've seen Wayne have some pretty heavy-duty accidents at various occasions. The start of the 86 season at Spain in practice, a nasty one. Surfers Paradise in 85. And of course the Oncini thing. Does that bother you when you see them? I mean, you've obviously seen some of them or watched them on television.
Yeah, you don't. You try and put it aside at the time. And I always get the second-hand news, like he's already had the crash. And he's fine, he's on the sideline, and people come back and say, oh, he's had a crash, but he's all right. So usually it's okay. But twice I've seen him crash in front of me, and you just think, oh my God, you know, you're not sure if he's going to get up or what he's going to do. But you have to. I get a lot of faith out of knowing that he knows what he's doing, and I can say to myself, well, you know, he's out there, he knows what he's doing, and he's not going to be silly about it. But sometimes when he gets in a silly mood and you think, uh-oh, you know, we could have a bit of a problem here. And that morning he's, I don't know, he's either on a downer or something, and he goes out on the track, and you think, I say to Jerry, you know, he wasn't in a very good mood this morning. I think we might have a few problems today. Sure enough, half an hour later, Wayne's crashed.
And do you ever have to straighten him out like you suggested?
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's hard for him to take. And he sort of...
put up a good fight sometimes.
Yeah. You know, and he sometimes says, oh, you know everything, but I can see it. I can't see it. Yeah. And he comes into me and sort of says, you know, oh, the lowly girlfriend or this or that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to kick him in the butt.
Actually, one of my mechanics, Will Hirsch, which has been with me since '82, he's really good because he understands me perfectly, you know, and if it looks like I'm in those type of moods where I don't care and I go out there and I do silly things, as Donna said, and I ended up crashing. He tries to catch me before and says, you know, he gives me a real roasting in the pit lane. He says, don't you go out and you really smarten yourself up, and a few swear words here and there. And he's pretty good because he does know me that well now through over the years, so he actually can tell whether it's a good day or a bad day, and if it's going to be bad, he tries to straighten me out before, because he doesn't want to see me hurt myself, and he doesn't want me to bend his bike up.
Any regrets from either of you in the last 10 years?
No, not really, no. We've had a pretty good run. We've had our ups and downs, I think, like normal people. But,
normal people.
Well, we are, yes. But we've had our ups and downs like everybody else. I mean, it's been a good career. I mean, I've enjoyed myself.
It's been a lot of hard work sometimes.
Yeah, it's been hard work. I mean, it's...
Picked up some nice toys along the way as well.
Yeah, I've had a good time. I mean, you've got to enjoy your success, I guess, and I like nice cars and things like that. Yeah, I mean, you've got to enjoy yourself.
Well, we wish you both the very best for 1987. Hope all goes well in the World Championship, and hopefully look forward to talking to you again this time next year. World #1.
Well, I hope so. Thanks very much.
Well, if you think that 500cc Grand Prix racing is cut and thrust and fast, wait till you see this one. An enthusiast by the name of Lucky Kaiser has developed his own muscle bike with a difference.
Dubbo is a typical country centre some 400 kilometres northwest of Sydney in New South Wales. Local engineer Lucky Kaiser has given Dubbo a touch of notoriety by building what is thought to be the world's largest motorcycle engine. Lucky sliced two end cylinders off a Rolls-Royce V12 24-litre aero engine and slotted it into his own frame. He chose a Suzuki front end, modified the engine and added a huge drag racing rear slick. The result? A 5-litre V-twin motorcycle. Kaiser found the engine lying untouched in a farmer's paddock.
Perfect design, perfect. Of course, like the technology at engine fair dinkum, with 4-valve heads, overhead cams, sodium-filled valves, and just supercharged. They run nitrous oxide in the planes too, constantly. No motors these days will take it constantly. And just everything's going for us. So that's why I picked on it. I reckon it's an incredible motor, and the bottom end's just bulletproof. You can't blow them up. It's incredible, like the bearing surfaces and the actual size of the components. Like the crank pin, for instance, 3 and 5/8 inch diameter. Like that's unheard of in most engines. You get an engine in an automobile that's only about 1.5 inches, if you're lucky. But these are just sheer peripheral sizes, for strength.
All he needs to do now is add the finishing touches and the machine will be ready for its first outing, probably a drag race meeting from Queensland.
I just want to go for a run. It'll look very similar. I don't have many cosmetics on it, but just enough so I can sit on the thing so I don't get chewed up, put a few guards on a few things. Just have change the sprockets on it, just go from the blast up the road, see what potential it has got. Then, of course, naturally, when you simulate when you're riding, you simulate a lot better than sitting here revving it because the motor's under load and things break down under load. And this belt here, I reckon, I hate to get the curlies caught up in there. Hurt a bit, wouldn't it? Get an instant tattoo off here. The other carburettor I had on here had a big funnel. And I was looking over it there and she just burst in a fight, hit a flame and it just burnt the air cleaner. Remember Wayne? Just burnt a big hole for the air cleaner like that, it's like poof. It's a vulnerable spot for it, isn't it? But when the tank's on here and everything, and then it'll go around, it'll be two separate tanks. And then the air cleaner will blend in with the tank, so it'll be fireproof to the tanks too, because I'd hate to have a fire start between fuel tanks. It'd be a nice state of affairs going along with a big fire, wouldn't it? But might even carry a little fire extinguisher laying on top here. I'd hate to burn this to the ground plus myself. But it's a project I'm happy with so far anyway. Got this far with it.
And now to a more traditional V-twin. Harley-Davidson's 883 Sportster is the company's latest weapon to take the sting out of the new Japanese custom cruisers. Protest magazine editor Fraser Stronach filed this report.
The budget bike in the Harley lineup is the new Evolution 883 Sportster, the baby in the range, but nevertheless every inch a Harley. Visually, the 883 is little changed from the older XL Sportsters. Indeed, many of the chassis and engine components are shared between the old and new Sportster models. Most of the changes are aimed at producing a cleaner and quieter running bike, and as a spin-off, the service intervals have also been increased. Despite all the changes, the 883 is still very much a Harley, with all the traditional Harley sounds and the old Harley feel. Right from the minute you fire it up, you can't mistake that lumpy offbeat idle of that chuff-chuff exhaust note. Physically, the 883 is small, given that it's still powered by a large engine. With its sit-up ride position, wide handlebars and low centre of mass, it's an easy bike to handle and ride at lower speeds. The throttle, clutch and brake actions are still heavy by most standards, but it's only a matter of time before you feel completely at home. The 883 is not a performance bike, but it's still easy to ride and gets along quickly enough without having to dance up and down the gearbox or use lots of revs. It's relaxing and peaceful to ride and completely different from just about any other bike on the road, Harley imitators included. Torque, not horsepower, is the Harley's strength, with the 883 capable of pulling from 40 kilometres an hour in top gear without protest. At the same time, the 883 is capable of cruising at 120 to 130 kilometres an hour. As with the older XL Sportsters, there's a certain amount of vibration at just about any engine speeds, although at 100 kilometres an hour in top, the 883 is at its smoothest. At 211 kilograms dry, the 883 is not particularly light. With much of that weight carried low in the frame, the bike has an overall feel of a much lighter machine. This low weight distribution, combined with the wide handlebars and the 883's small physical size, makes for a handy, easy handling bike at low and medium speeds. In fact, at urban speeds, the 883 is an extremely confidence-inspiring and easy bike to ride. At higher speeds, the handling is still quite acceptable, but if pushed hard, it will show its limitations. The front forks offer plenty of travel, are softly sprung and give a plush, comfortable ride over most surfaces. The rear suspension is short of travel, and to prevent it bottoming out, it's more firmly sprung than the front. A change to air-spring type suspension could bring about a big improvement here. The 883 has plenty of cornering clearance, and with its respectable brakes and good tyres, it can be ridden in a surprisingly sporting manner. The most disappointing aspect of the Sporty is its comfort. The saddle seat is poorly shaped and too soft. There isn't much room for larger riders, and it doesn't have a pillion seat. The 883 is a simple, basic bike. There are no add-ons or extra frills, just the bare essentials needed to get you from A to B. For all this, the 883 is still a Harley, and it's hard to describe the presence that Harleys have makes the bike so attractive. The 883 is basically an urban scooter, a role that performs with admirable elan. When you consider that it's only just a little more expensive than its Japanese competitors, it's a very attractive proposition.
An event not to be missed for the Golden Oldies is the annual Historic Racing Registers meeting at Oran Park. The two-day event attracts some of the best riders and machines in the class. Marques including Norton, Triumph, AJS and Ariel, and even some of the early Japanese irons. Their two-stroke crackle a distinct contrast to the booming thunder of big singles and twins. Wright's beautiful JA Prestwich outfit is just one example of the effort each owner puts into their machine so they can relive the excitement of days gone by when they took centre stage on sales room floors and racing circuits around the world. Not only do the bikes retain their charm, some take it to heart not to change in any way. Racing historic and classic bikes is a growing sport throughout the world, and even though many of the bikes and riders are long past their prime, the racing, sights and sounds can still attract even the youngest of fans.
past, here's something high-tech. Yamaha's latest offering into the highly competitive 250cc road-going market is the new TZR 250. It's probably as close as you'll ever get to a Grand Prix road racer to ride on the road. It's fast and light and offers an entirely new dimension in road-going 250 proddies. The latest 250 offering from Yamaha is the TZR 250, a machine light years ahead of the old-style two-strokes. The TZ250 is the definitive sports bike, and if sports bikes are your thing, you won't find any more fun concentrated in one package than in this machine. The TZR is light, little, furiously fast, but at the same time, surprisingly civilised. Fraser found that after riding the machine, you'll begin to wonder whether sports bikes need to be any bigger. For on winding roads, it offers a combination of power, brakes, handling and stability that's very hard to match.
The TZR's race heritage becomes obvious as soon as you settle into the low seat and crouch forward to the clip-on style handlebars. The emphasis is on tucking the rider into the neatest aerodynamic shape as possible. The ride position won't suit everyone, for it's designed for speed, not for cruising. There's no electric starter here, for the emphasis is on lightweight and performance, not convenience. Likewise, in the mid-range, the TZR feels more like a 350 than a 250, such is the strength of engine response. The TZR power kicks in with authority at 7,000 RPM. It doesn't really sign off until 500 RPM over the 10,000 RPM red line. These sorts of engine speeds, the acceleration of the TZR is phenomenal. For sporty riding, the transition into the power band is reasonably smooth, while a sub-power band that exists from 5,000 to 7,000 RPM makes the TZR more forgiving if you misjudge a corner and come out a gear too high. Out on the highway, the TZR will happily pull top gear at moderate speeds, which makes for relaxed open road riding. It surges out of corners with all the punch of a much bigger bike, making easy work of just about any road. The handling of the race-bred TZR is nearly perfect on smooth roads, although its lightweight does lead to some untidiness on rougher surfaces. The steering effort is at a minimum, and changing directions is virtually effortless. At just about any speed, the TZR feels as nimble as a 125. As with the late model RZs, the suspension on the TZR has reached a high level of refinement. The forks in particular are impressive. Are on the soft side and feel better with all the preload wound on. The 130mm of travel soaks up most bumps with little or no disturbance to the bike or rider. The rear suspension has only 100mm of travel, and while this isn't a great deal by contemporary standards, it still feels compliant and well controlled. Cornering clearance is excellent by any standards, and only very hard riding will find the tips of the footrests kissing the tarmac. The big single front disc complements the rest of the bike as it offers plenty of stopping power without excessive weight or bulk. Twin discs would be overkill on a bike like this.
Like its predecessors, the RD and RZ twins of this decade, the TZR is powered by a liquid-cooled parallel twin-cylinder two-stroke. The TZR breathes through 28mm flat-slide carburettors, and from its 249cc engine produces 37 kilowatts at 10,000 RPM and 35.3 newton-meters of torque at 9,750 RPM. Setting it aside from the RD and RZ, however, is the use of crankcase reed induction, with the incoming charge drawn directly into the crankcase via fibre reeds. On the exhaust side, the TZR uses Yamaha's patented power valve arrangement. This helps to produce better low-speed power and improved high-speed running. Housing the TZR motor is an aluminium delta box frame that owes much to Yamaha's race bike technology. This twin spar design uses two main members to connect the steering head with the swing arm pivot. Up front, 39mm diameter forks provide 130mm of travel with adjustable spring preload. Yamaha's rising rate monocross system is used on the rear, offering some 100mm of travel and also adjustable spring preload. Like the TZ250 racer, the TZR employs a single front 320mm diameter disc with 4-piston Brembo-style caliper. At the rear is a small 210mm disc with an opposed twin-piston caliper. The TZR runs on 17-inch wheels and with new generation low-profile tyres. With a top speed of over 190 kilometres an hour and acceleration over 400 metres of under 13 seconds, the TZR is a big performing little bike. It may not be everyone's idea of an ideal motorcycle, but as a sportster, it's hard to beat regardless of its capacity. The TZ250 is a true racer for the road, and while there are many bikes that claim to be the real thing, few come as close to living up to their manufacturer's claims as this little Yamaha. With the world's major road racing classes now restricted to 750cc, it's not surprising that the leading manufacturers are embroiled in a battle to build the best 750 Sportster. Recently, Video Cycle magazine tested Honda's VFR 750, Suzuki's GSXR 750, Yamaha's FZ 750 and Kawasaki's GPX 750R. Each manufacturer has taken its own route to building the best Sportster, and the end result is a very close match on the road.
Sit on the VFR and the ride position is natural and relaxed. Your legs aren't too cramped and the reach to the handlebars isn't too long. Like the Honda, the Yamaha offers a comfortable and relaxed ride position. But unlike the V4 powered machine, the FZ seat is too narrow, too hard, and the fairing screen too low to effectively break up the wind blast at higher speeds. Its handlebars are wider than those of the other three bikes, and with the narrow fairing, this places the rider's hands at the mercy of the elements. The ride position of the GPX is particularly comfortable, and in many ways feels like the Yamaha, but with a wider and softer seat. It offers plenty of leg room, while the reach to the handlebars isn't too long. But the performance of the fairing isn't as good as Suzuki, as the rider's hands aren't protected from the wind or weather. But it still works better than that on the Yamaha and is a close match to that fitted on the Honda. The Suzuki's riding position is the most racer-like, with foot pegs that are placed higher and further rearwards. The handlebars are lower and narrower, so the rider has little choice in adopting the racer's crouch. Most riders will find the Suzuki the least comfortable. All is not lost, however, for on the highway the Suzuki's fairing offers the best wind and weather protection, and this does much to redress the comfort situation. It also does much for the Suzuki's aspirations as a sports tourer. But as its ride position suggests, the Suzuki is the real racer of the four. For two-up riding, the Kawasaki is the best. The pillion gets a flat and reasonably wide seat plus a grab rail. The footrests aren't too high, and there's adequate leg room for all but the taller pillions. The Honda offers reasonable pillion accommodation, although the seat slopes more forward than on the Kawasaki. The pillion is provided with a grab rail, but the leg room is more limited. In pillion comfort, the Yamaha is one step down from the Honda. It has a narrower and shorter seat with even less leg room. For pillions, the Suzuki isn't too comfortable. The footrests are placed too high, allowing only minimal leg room. As the rider leans well forward, the passenger is hit directly by the wind. With its low flywheel mass and light throttle action, the FZ's engine is extra responsive. It's also smooth running with only a few brief periods of vibration. It offers an incredibly wide power band and will pull cleanly from 1500 RPM in just about any gear. There's no real power band as such, although the power does kick in with increased authority at 6000 RPM. The FZ requires only 4,500 to 5,000 RPM on the tacho to ensure a clean, strong exit from any corner. The Kawasaki GPX motor is like the others in its class, tuned primarily for top-end speed, and as such, the bottom-end and mid-range response isn't all that it could be. The engine's trump card is its smoothness. Another pleasing thing about the GPX motor is that once over 4,000 RPM, the power builds up progressively to the 11,500 RPM redline. Not so good is the somewhat stifled power delivery below 4,000 RPM. It doesn't affect the machine's sporting ability, but makes for frustrating around-town performance. It's difficult to pin the Kawasaki's power band down to definite figures. Power builds up progressively without ever kicking in hard like the Suzuki. The Kawasaki's mid-range still isn't as strong as that of the Honda or the Yamaha, but the delivery is more consistent than that of the Suzuki. The Suzuki's oil and air-cooled motor feels the less refined and less civilized of the four machines. It initially feels harsher and more tuned up than the Honda, Yamaha or Kawasaki. The GSX-R is also less progressive in its power delivery. The GSX-R makes reasonably strong power right from idle through to around 6,500 RPM, but then it falls in a hole and doesn't come good again until 7,500 to 8,000 RPM. And when it does light up, it does so with a rush. The VFR's engine is exceptionally smooth and particularly free revving. Off idle and up to 3,000 RPM, it's a little breathless, and in top gear at very low revs, it does suffer from transmission snatch. But from 3,000 RPM upwards, it pulls very cleanly in any gear, and considering the brilliant top-end performance, the mid-range is most impressive. If you're pressing on at higher speeds, 6,500 to 7,000 RPM is the lower limit of really strong power, but considering the 11,500 RPM red line, that's a pretty wide power band.
The use of a V in the Honda VFR instead of an inline design sets it aside from the other bikes. The liquid-cooled 90-degree V4 engine gives 77 kilowatts at 10,500 RPM and 76.4 newton metres at 8,500 RPM. The motor has a new 180-degree crank, and the crankcases are more compact and lighter. There's no chain drive to the overhead cams, but gear drive from the centre of the crank. The crank design allows for a better exhaust to be fitted, thus improving power. The Kawasaki engine is arguably the most conventional of the four, with its liquid-cooled 4 valves per cylinder design built into the traditional in-line and upright format. Technically, it breaks little ground, but offers a level of refinement not previously seen in Kawasaki's fours. The 749cc engine produces 78.7 kilowatts at 10,500 RPM. Suzuki's inline 4-cylinder engine is also very interesting, being both air and oil-cooled. It pumps out 73.5 kilowatts at 10.5 and 70.6 newton metres of torque at 9,000 RPM. The uniqueness of the Yamaha FZ750 lies with its 5 valves per cylinder engine, which is laid forward and uses downdraft carburettors. It's the most revolutionary engine, and in many ways Yamaha's efforts have been well rewarded. The cylinders are canted well forward, thus placing more weight towards the front of the bike, an important benefit when it comes to handling. With the engine inclined, downdraft carburettors can be used, and combined with the unique 5 valves per cylinder layout, induction efficiency is improved. The FZ750 engine produces 75 kilowatts at 10,500 RPM and 78.5 newton metres of torque at 8,000 RPM. GSX-R chassis is the most purpose-built of the 750s. It's a duplex cradle design with cold-cast alloy steering head and swing-arm pivot, plus multi-rib box section extruded aluminium tubing. Kawasaki's chassis departs little from the accepted norm, a full cradle, steel tube design with a bolt-on box section alloy subframe. An all-steel box section duplex cradle frame is used on the Yamaha FZ, tubing splayed widely around the engine. Like the motor, Honda's chassis is all new. It's a twin-spar beam frame, and it's fabricated from all aluminium alloy, with the engine a stressed member of the frame. The design owes much to Honda's Formula One and endurance racing experience. The VFR's seat rail is a bolt-on design. The GSX-R forks are 38mm items with preload and dampening adjustment, plus anti-dive. The brakes are also the most powerful of the four, with a total of 10 caliper pistons working on 3 discs. The GSX-R uses the full floater rear suspension system, offering adjustable preload and damping. 18-inch wheels are used at both ends, and the bike is the lightest of the four at 176 kilograms in its dry form. The GPX forks are also 38mm in diameter, with 3-position rebound damping and anti-dive. Brakes are dual piston, single-sided sliding head calipers. The leading piston is smaller than the trailing one, and so that makes the brakes feel more progressive. Kawasaki's rear Unitrack single shock system is air assisted with adjustable damping. The GPX has a 16-inch front and an 18-inch rear wheel and tips the scales at 190 kilograms dry. Honda's forks are 37mm in diameter with 4-position anti-dive. Brakes are dual piston calipers all round. The ProLink suspension system is used on the Honda's rear with preload adjustment. The VFR also uses a 16-inch front and 18-inch rear wheel and weighs in at 199 kilograms dry. Yamaha's FZ uses 39mm forks with auto compression damping and anti-dive. Opposed piston calipers are used on all discs. Yamaha's FZ has a single shock system, dubbed the Monocross, with both preload and rebound adjustment. Again, 16-inch front and 18-inch rear wheels are used. The FZ is the heaviest of the four at 209 kilograms dry.
The VFR is a relatively quick steering bike that remains stable at higher speeds. It has a compact and tight feel that offers plenty of feedback from both ends of the machine. This allows you to press on with confidence because you know exactly what the bike is doing beneath you. Combined with the responsive nature of the power delivery, the VFR is an excellent bike for back road scratching. Suspension performance on bumpier roads is, however, less than ideal. It's not that the VFR gets untidy on bumpier roads, but that too much road shock finds its way back to the rider. This is particularly true of the rear suspension, which lacks the compliance of the suspension of the three other bikes. With its low centre of mass, the FZ feels easier to throw around than the other three, although it lacks the steering precision of the Honda or the advantage of lightweight offered by the Suzuki. With more suspension travel and associated lighter spring rates than the Suzuki or the Honda, the FZ chassis works nicely over a broader range of road conditions. The more compliant suspension not only provides a more comfortable ride, but it allows the Yamaha to tackle a greater variety of roads without its handling deteriorating. The GPX is a light steering bike that generally feels easy to throw around. It steers well at most speeds and generally feels sure-footed and responsive. It still lacks the steering precision of the Honda or lightweight confidence of the Suzuki, but it points better in and out of corners than the Yamaha. Sporting riders will appreciate the excellent cornering clearance, which allows the bike to be hauled over further than the Honda or Yamaha, though not the Suzuki. The forks are a little on the soft side, although for most riding work well enough. But at higher speeds on bumpier roads, more preload or better still firmer springs would be preferable. Unfortunately, spring preload isn't adjustable. The rear suspension offers a reasonably comfortable and compliant ride without working as well as the Yamaha or Suzuki rear suspensions. For most purposes, the Suzuki is the best handling of the four, although at very high speeds it lacks the stability of the Honda and to a lesser extent the Yamaha. The Suzuki's advantage is its lack of weight. With less mass to stop or to change direction, it does everything that much easier. It also has the best brakes and cornering clearance. But it has a high-speed nervousness, and if the bike isn't set up correctly, it tends to weave at speeds nearing its maximum. The Suzuki's front suspension is also lacking. With only 100mm of travel, it feels the bumps more than the other three. But at the rear, the suspension has a nice progression and plenty of travel. The much criticised damper on the rear isn't a problem on the road, although it has proved to be the bike's major racetrack weakness. Weighing up all the pros and cons is a difficult job, but it's made easier because the Suzuki falls into its own class as an uncompromising sports stick. If you desire a real racer for the road, look no further. For that style of riding, it's the pick of the four. The other three fight it out for the All-Rounder award. In one bike, Honda has been able to combine all the hard-nosed sporting ability you'll ever need with the comfort and civility of a thoroughly enjoyable street bike. If it wasn't for its suspension, the all-round title would go to the Honda. The Kawasaki is also a strong contender for the all-rounder award, but it lacks the steering precision and the high-speed stability of the Honda. In some ways, it's still the best all-rounder, but more through doing everything reasonably well rather than being brilliant in any one particular area. The Yamaha FZ is also in there with an excellent engine and fine suspension, but the uncomfortable seat and small fairing work against it. Its low centre of mass makes the FZ easier to throw around, although it lacks the steering precision of the VFR or the 30-plus kilo weight saving of the Suzuki. In outright performance comparisons, it's pretty close. The Suzuki has the advantage in acceleration due to its light weight, but both the Honda and Yamaha have more mid-range power. The Kawasaki mid-range isn't as strong as the Yamaha or Honda, but the delivery is more consistent than that of the Suzuki. With the prestige associated with winning either the TT Formula One Championship, the World Endurance Championship, or the proposed Superbike Championship at stake, it's not surprising that all four offer sparkling performance and racetrack quality handling. More surprising is that all four manufacturers have managed to combine a high level of refinement and day-to-day practicality with that racetrack performance. The choice is yours.
Motorcyclists made Christmas '86 a memorable occasion for many people with the annual MRA Toy Run and the Ducati Club's 10th birthday celebrations. Now, who says bikers don't have a heart of gold beneath all that leather? Thousands of motorcyclists took part in the annual Motorcycle Riders Association Toy Run, loaded with teddy bears, dolls, games and other toys destined for needy kids at Christmas. The event is held on the same day in capital centres throughout Australia. Christmas 1986 was no exception, and once again, thousands of kids weren't forgotten by Santa Claus that year. Sydney's Oran Park was the venue for the weekend celebration of the Ducati Owners Club of New South Wales' 10th birthday. Owners and enthusiasts came from all parts of Australia, some riding thousands of kilometres to take part in the concourse, racing and general festivities. At the rally were some of the finest examples in the Southern Hemisphere of the Bologna factory's V-twin, single and parallel twin machines. Saturday evening saw the good times roll. Dr. Taglioni would have been proud.
Most motorcycle enthusiasts have at one stage or another craved a superbike, a modern term with modern overtones. In our next story, we take a look at a bike that many people believed in its day was a superbike, the Brough Superior. Here's Lester's report.
My name's Lester Morris. This is the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles. So called for many years, not only by George Brough, the man who built the Brough Superior, but that's what this machine is, but also by a great many enthusiasts who couldn't afford to own a Brough Superior, and by the lucky few who could. It was a favoured machine of aristocrats, dukes, earls, and no less a luminary than T.E. Lawrence, the legendary Lawrence of Arabia, who owned no fewer than 7 Brough Superior. Okay, If it stood the test of time, as obviously it has, because this is quite an old machine, then what did Brough Superior have going for it? Let's have a close look and find out. George Brough made many very special engines of his own, but like a lot of manufacturers in the 20s and the 30s, he brought in proprietary engines of one sort or another, and this is a classic example. This is a 1939 1150 Brough Superior with a Jap made by J.A. Prestwich in England, 50-degree V-twin. But it differs from modern machines in having the side valve design with the valve stems here and the valve heads uppermost. So there's no cam or valve gear in the cylinder heads at all. Aluminium crankcase, obviously, little aluminium cases here where the tappets are to be adjusted, but cast iron head and cylinder barrel. The ignition was controlled by a magneto out the front, which was chain driven from a half-tone pinion here, with the generator, the dynamo as Lucas used to call it, mounted on top of the magneto and driven by a small fibre gear. That was in fact a mag-dyno unit. Underneath the drive to the generator system was the oil pump, because it was a dry sump design with the oil tank back here behind the rear cylinder. It was fitted with a Norton gearbox, 1939 Brough Superior with Norton gearbox, because again gearboxes were proprietary lines which were bought in by many manufacturers. As far as the suspension's concerned, the front suspension, a set of the old tried and true girder forks with the spring on the outside and no hydraulic damping at all. But damping was controlled very easily and very well simply by this hand wheel, which tightened up, applied pressure to fibre discs in there and there, two on the other side, which controlled the oscillation of the springs and in fact resulted in a surprisingly good ride up front. I might say that this machine's been set up for sidecar use and the front springs are quite heavy, so it's a little chattery up the front, but rides very well nonetheless. Rear suspension, well, there's none at all. But the spring saddle, a large and very comfortable spring saddle with a good 2 inches of movement here, actually irons out a lot of the road shocks very well indeed. You can hear the suspension on the front working, you can hear the rear end bounding blithely over potholes and bomb craters, but the seat itself does a very, very good job in holding the machine in one line. It's low, it's very long, and most of the weight mass is down either below or level with the wheel spindles. What that means is, with a low centre of gravity, even though it's a big, lumpy old machine, it handles very well indeed. Specifications, 85mm bore, 85.7mm bore, 95 stroke. It poured out its peak power, get this, at 4,000 RPM. Its peak torque, which is over 47 foot-pounds, was generated at an incredibly low 2,000 RPM. So if you look at your tachometer on your Kawasaki or your Suzuki, your Honda or Yamaha, you'll find that at idle, it idles at about 1,500 RPM. So imagine this machine pouring out its peak torque at only 2,000 RPM. What that results in on the road, what it translates to on the road, is a widest possible spread of power. So you can pull out, in fact, as I've done on this machine, from some 15 miles an hour in top gear and open the throttle, and it will dig in and actually pull away. Now, that speed on the road translates to around 800 RPM. They don't build them like that anymore. Now, the Brough Superior's left side is not nearly as interesting. Simply a 29 type AMAL carburetor, typically unfiltered, 2 float bowls because it is a sidecar machine, and the primary drive contained in this aluminium oil bath chain case, because it is a separate gearbox. And as it is a sidecar machine, sidecar fittings there, there, up under there, and sometimes down on there. In fact, the Brough Superior was imported by the Victorian Police Department as a sidecar machine in the 30s. Unhappily, Brough Superior is no longer with us. This is a 1939 model, the last of the mark to be brought into Australia, and of course Brough has, unfortunately, happened to many other manufacturers, disappeared without trace during the Second World War.
And last but not least, our own director of photography, Will Hirsch. Here he is, alias Beatman, performing Moto Psycho.
right, that's